Good morning, and welcome to another Seize the Day. Today's Monday, September the 23rd, and as you can see, I'm not home. I'm in South Carolina, and let me see if I could just turn this a little bit. The views here are amazing. We are seated on a golf course. As you can see, it's really pretty, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to just have these conversations with you in the morning. So just taking a few days vacation with Cindy and my brother and sister-in-law, and so we'll be back by the end of the week. But I trust you're waking up feeling refreshed and ready to begin a new day. I thought we would spend some time this morning, and I hope that there's some background noise might be filtered out. If it's not, it's going to be a little difficult for me to do that this week because everybody's getting ready. I can't believe how much activity is on a golf course early in the morning. I came out here yesterday at 5 a.m. just to see the sunrise, to have some coffee, just relax and wait for the sun to come up. And the amount of activity for them to get the golf course ready was amazing. It was just everybody's working, lights are going, blowers are going. It was quite the sight. So we'll see how that works out this week. But I thought this week we would spend some time looking at a book in anticipation of our Casket Empty series. As you know, this coming Sunday, the 29th, will be the beginning of a new series called Casket Empty. And if you haven't ordered your materials, you could be. It's easy to just to think of your Old Testament Bible study, a timeline, maps, all these things that are going to be used in our studies together. And you could order them directly online at BethanyChurch.com. So if you get on BethanyChurch.com, if you haven't gotten the materials, you can get them there, and we'll be using those as we work our way through the Old Testament. The Bible study next week, I'll begin to just walk through that with you, so that my goal, and I hope yours, is that at the end of our time of this season together, that your Bibles will become so much more relevant to you, and won't be such a closed book, but you'll have a mind for the events and activities that God has purposed in this book, so that we might get to know him better as well as his purposes. So today, in anticipation of that, I'd just like for you to think with me on this one theme of living by faith. And for that, I want to turn to the book of Habakkuk. And I've prepared some slides together, but I thought, today's like the 23rd. September 11th was just about a week and a half ago, and I thought that it would be good to just think a little bit in terms of some of the hardships that have taken place in our world, and so I put together this little series called Prevail, and I'd like to take us through that this week, and hopefully this will be a blessing to you as well. You may recall, right, that on September 11th, if you look at that first photograph where you have the tower still standing, you see that one plane coming in. Those people in the tower had no idea what was coming, and then in this second photo, you could see the other plane headed in towards the second tower, and both of those towers would eventually just crumble to the ground. What you may not know is while that was taking place, right, our Pentagon was also being attacked, and the amount of casualties there were much less, but nonetheless so devastating to us as a country. Another plane was taken down in a field right in Pennsylvania, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after some of the passengers had overpowered the hijackers and saved many lives that day. There was almost 3,000 people who were killed that day. There was like 344 firefighters and and you know, 71 law enforcement officers, about 55 military personnel, and they all died at the Pentagon. More than 90 countries, think about this, 90 countries across the world lost about 372 citizens in attacks that day. What you may not know is that the the pilot for uh, the pilot for the first flight, American Airlines Flight 11, flew into that first World Trade Center, and he was also a member at Bethany Church. Um, on our feed, you often see the name Sally Welch, and Sally and John was an airplane pilot, and they were not far. They were neighbors to the McGinnises, and they shared a lot of camaraderie about flight and life. And they came also to Bethany, and Sally had the enviable position to go and speak to Tom McGinnis's wife. So it's a small world in some ways when you begin to think about all that has transpired. But I want you to, the reason why I mention this to you is because I what I'd like for you to do is I want you to think with me for a moment about some of these events that took place on this day, and and with that, um, I feel like it would be good for us to just think back at a period of time when there was all this evil that had fallen on this world as we know it, and and it's difficult sometimes to stand firm when you find that the world is just revealing so much darkness, when the world confronts you with unspeakable terror and sorrow. It's difficult to stand firm when the ground beneath you gives way to unrelenting storms. So consequently, what you find is a lot of us, right? People withdraw from the world. We want to put as much distance between us and this world's troubles. And some find relief by working longer. Some people drink more. We're afraid to slow down because we don't really want to ponder the present reality that we find ourselves in. And then there are others, we take a different path, right? We choose to reflect on matters of faith and God. But sadly, in this world, there is no permanent escape from trouble. For even within these communities, right, our peace can be shattered sometimes when you find the spiritual leaders themselves violating people's sacred trust, or a church manifests the sins of selfishness and pride and prejudice or immorality, slander, just to name a few, right? And it's easy to become disillusioned in those moments when the world seems to come crashing down on your sacred space. And so you're left at a crossroads, really. There's this angst that just begins to build inside because you're wondering, where am I going to find peace? Where can I find justice? How are things going to turn around? And sometimes you that level of angst can reach such a level that you even get angry with God, and you start pointing your finger up to the heavens, and you're like, hey, why aren't you doing something? If you're all powerful, why can't you at least protect the faithful? And so you ask yourself, like, where are we to find this kind of justice? How are we to stand up to life's challenges? And there are some answers for that, but the answers aren't always so forthcoming, are they? You have to work a little hard. They're not quite as obvious because we come up with solutions and we find them deficient because there's still this place in one's heart, man, where it's just not really feeling settled yet. We run hard, We think maybe with greater success, it will calm the storm that rages, but it doesn't. I think what I'd like to do is tell you about a path that's found in the Old Testament. There's a story, a book of Habakkuk, and the story begins in a world very much like I started off today's sermon, with you, right? It's a world that's very tumultuous. It takes place in a time period when um, the country of Israel is it's just growing darker and darker, and the culture around it is just undermining, God's work. So I have a map here on that I'd like for you to take a look at with me, and this is a map now that will bring will bring up a a map of a divided Israel. You see that red portion entitled Israel and the bluer portion entitled Judah. That's just so in your mind you can see that this is no longer one unified country. Internally, there was these struggles, right? And instead of really following the Lord's will and purposes, um, they wind up. It's all about power, right? It's all about the land, and the next thing you know, people are ostracized one from the other. Now, what I want you to recognize is that the northern kingdom, Israel, is going to be overrun. So that whole section that you see up on this map, it eventually is going to be overrun. But by whom? Well, I put up this little thing, and I'm just going to put the slides up for now and talk in the background. In 722 BC, the Assyrians are going to come and they're going to conquer that northern kingdom known as Israel. And I just want you to have a couple of these dates in your head, because what we're going to talk about this week about what it means to live by faith in a world that is so, um, it could be very unstable on so many fronts. I think we learned some of the lessons here from Habakkuk. But in 722, Assyria is going to come from the north, and they're going to conquer that whole northern kingdom. It's going to be destroyed. You are never going to hear of that northern kingdom again. From there, though, you go on, and it says in 712 BC, Babylon is going to conquer Assyria. So Babylon conquers Assyria. So no matter how big a dog Assyria thought they were, notice in just a little over 100 years, that tremendous empire of Assyria is going to fall to this rising empire of Babylon. And that's in 612. Now, Assyria rose to power because they had formed an alliance with Egypt way down in the south. And so with Assyria on the north and Egypt in the south, they were squeezing the nation of Israel that was between them. So Assyria joined forces with Egypt, but in 605, Babylon, they fell. They just conquered the Egyptians. And then eventually, what we will find is in 586 BC, Babylon will then go on to destroy the southern kingdom of Judah. It will take over the entire country. It will burn down the temple. It'll destroy Jerusalem and its city gates, and all the people will be exiled into the country, into the territories that they had conquered. You know that as the exile. Now, one of the things that you see in this map is you can see how Babylon, it's like this wave that just keeps on coming. It's just unfolding until all of a sudden what you're finding is, Babylon now is in control. Well, another little thing that I want you to recognize, and I'm going to put this up on a bigger map too, is that the kingdom that Babylon would take over, if you see here on the orange outline, it just dwarfed that of the Assyrian kingdom So you see all the way down to Egypt and the Nile, and all the way up north, all the way over towards the Persian Gulf, where you find Iraq today. All of that land now was a part of the Babylonian Empire. And so as a result of that, you can see, boy, they just really took over. But as I showed you all these maps, what I want you to do is just look at these two red arrows here with me for a moment. Because beginning at 722 BC and going right to where 586 is to be found, what I want you to realize, that's a period of time now where God was going to raise up some prophets. It was a prophet of Jeremiah. It was a prophet of Habakkuk. And they were prophesying during this time, telling people of the coming destruction. God was preparing his people for what was coming. And he was going to bring judgment because Israel had become so apostate. And now Judah was following in its steps. So in your head, the reason why I'm putting all this down here for you is primarily because I want you to listen to this text that Jeremiah would write in Jeremiah chapter 22 and verses 8 and 9. It says, people from many nations will pass by this city and will ask one another, why has the Lord done such a thing to this great city? And the answer will be, because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God and have worshiped and served other gods. See, this is all about breaking covenant. That covenant that God gave to Israel, remember at Mount Sinai, when Moses goes up and receives the 10 commandments and he comes down. And you remember what those commandments were? You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. In other words, don't misrepresent God, put words in his mouth, saying that he's something that he's not. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, a day that was meant for us to align ourselves again with God's mind, with God's heart, right? Honor your mother and father. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't bear false witness against your neighbor. And don't covet your neighbor's stuff. Those were all, statutes that God gave to his people that would keep them in harmony with him and with one another. Jesus would come along and Jesus would speak to this, right? And what did we? How would Jesus speak of these 10 commandments? On the Sermon on the Mount, did he not expand on them? So he said, listen, if a man is angry with his brother, he's murdered him. If a man looks at a woman with lust in his heart, he's already committed adultery. So all of these commandments now were taken to a much deeper level, which then puts all of us in the recognition that, oh my gosh, like we have a way to go. and so here God is saying that the nation had become so unfaithful that he was about to bring judgment on them. And that's why in our study, when I put up this slide and you get those two lines here, what I want you to realize is Habakkuk is living right as all of these events are beginning to unfold. They're all beginning to happen. So can you imagine living during this period? This, no doubt, was a very dangerous period full of war and unrest. However, before Jerusalem would fall to Babylon, God raised up, these prophets, and Habakkuk was one of those individuals. Habakkuk lived during these tumultuous days. This was a time now when the southern kingdom of Judah had become not only increasingly faithless, but Habakkuk had to contend with the political, economic, social unrest of warring nations from the outside. So think about it. Habakkuk lived in days of great spiritual apostasy from the inside, but he also was living with all of the tumult that was taking place on the outside. So talk about instability. Inside the community, it was bad, and the world as he knew it was beginning to crumble. And I think that this could be a great, great opportunity now for us, because don't you feel some days that that's exactly how you feel? You turn on your television and it's wars and rumors of wars, right? You look inside and see all the strife that's taking place on so many fronts in the states across our country. And then you're trying to live this life of faith, and you're like, God, man, what are you doing? This is overwhelming. Well, my friends, that's what I want to talk to you about this week. I want to talk to you about Habakkuk's conversation with God that would lead him to a place where God would give him a great, great answer on how to stand firm in the midst of life's struggles. So our time is just about up for today, and so I would love for you to just join me this week as we take a further look at this book of Habakkuk. Why don't you read it today and spend this time? And I'll do my best to make sure that I lead us in this study during this week. So for now, I'm just going to draw our time together here to a close. I do want to thank you so much for joining me on this Monday, and I trust that the Lord would just continue to bless our time together, and I look forward tomorrow to getting together. God bless, my friends.